Welcome, everyone, to Odds and Ends, Life, Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts. I am Andrew Joseph Kozlowski. With me is my good friend, world-class musician, music producer, and co-host, Mr. Cool himself, Mr. Clyde Ballard. Clyde, my friend, it's great to see you nice and healthy again.
Yeah.
I know you went through an interesting couple of weeks there, brother.
Oh, yeah. I came back from death's door. And I'm glad to be here. You know, I'm speaking about COVID for those who might not know. Yeah. It is real, and I survived it, and it has made me appreciate life a whole lot more because it didn't have to turn out so good. So that's why I'm so happy to be here to be able to do this Klezmer show. You know.
Yeah, thank God that you're doing well and you handled it very, very well. Tonight we have a very special guest. I'll tell you, a guy who graduated the Juilliard School in May of 2000. He's a leading active performance guy with the Dallas Brass, and later he was a band leader, composer, and soloist. The man is actually an amazing voice for a very special brand of music that we're going to talk about today. He in 1995, he received an award from the Israeli Musicians Union for excellence in performance, and he was the recipient of the American Israel Cultural Foundation Scholarship. These are some very prestigious things that he has done, and of course, he's performed the Louisville Orchestra, Northeastern Pennsylvania Philharmonic, the Jupiter Symphony. I can go on and on and on. With many of the places he has come and been a part of. He attended, he was born in Moscow, and he's an endorsing artist for the New York Trumpet Company.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can't wait. You're biting at the bit to get to our special guest tonight, Mr. David Glukh. So let's bring him in. A little video to introduce him to our audience. Mr. David Glukh. And so, ladies and gentlemen, our special guest for this evening, Mr. David Glukh. David, welcome to our program, Odds and Ends, Life, Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts.
Thanks for having me.
Clyde?
Are you there? Are you there, Dave?
Absolutely.
Yes, he's there. He's there.
Beautiful. Yeah, we just wanted to say hello and greet you. I mean, it's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to do a show like this for a long time with you because you're probably one of the most knowledgeable men that I know in terms of the history and the genealogy of klezmer music. You know, and I'm
very
glad.
kind.
Yes, I'm glad that you're a friend. And this is a wonderful journey into this music because it's so interwoven into American culture. So the question I wanted to ask you is, what is the earliest records that we can say klezmer music began?
Well, interestingly enough, klezmer music has been around for a very, very long time, since about 16th century. 16th century. So, of course, there's no recordings that we can listen to.
Right.
But there are quite a few texts and pictures that we can see, paintings of klezmer musicians throughout the Renaissance and the Baroque era.
Okay.
And the instruments that they would play are very different from the instruments that we would play nowadays.
Yes. And you were born in Russia, am I correct?
Yes, I was born in Russia, ex-Soviet Union.
But there was klezmer music there as well when you were growing up, am I correct?
When I was growing up, it was in 80s, mostly late 70s, 80s, and everything that had to do with Jewish, Jewish music was kind of suppressed, was not very much welcomed by authorities,
Okay.
So, but nevertheless, you would learn a song or two from your grandparents.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that, David. What got you involved? What sparked your interest in this music?
Well, first of all, this is music of my heritage. Okay, me being a Jewish person, in 1990, my family immigrated to Israel, and so when we immigrated to Israel, we have learned Hebrew, and we have also immersed ourselves within the culture that was ripped from us by Soviets for many, many years. And we're rediscovering our heritage, rediscovering our roots and who we are and where we come from. And the music was part of it. And it actually happened very accidentally. There was a guy who knew somebody else, like musicians. One musician knows another musician, another musician knows this musician. They said, listen, there's a guy, he wants to put a klezmer band together. Okay. I must have been maybe, 15, 16 at the time.
You were playing then, right? You were a musician then, right?
Yeah, I was, I was a classically trained musician, and I was a student of classical. I was very interested in jazz. I started playing jazz around that time. And the klezmer was, something new that this musician introduced me to it. Okay, he put, the first tunes in front of me and I say, play, and I played and said, well, maybe like this, maybe like that, and he offered some suggestions. So my first exposure to klezmer was through his band that he put together. After this initial introduction, my next broader introduction was after I already came to United States in '96 to study at Juilliard.
Yes.
And at the same time, I met many klezmer musicians here in New York, and at first played with some other groups, and then I decided to sort of form my own group down the line, and that's how it's all kind of got started for me.
Yes. Now, klezmer music has a very deep spiritual meaning for Jewish people. Am I correct? It's considered a very serious music.
It's a very good question, actually, because there are two answers to that question.
Uh-oh.
You know, yes and no. Okay. So the one part which is yes, it is a deep spiritual, but another part of it, it has a very sort of abundance of joy about it, and it goes from one extreme to another often. So it goes from the most sorrowful sort of, this krecht kind of, we use that term, to just complete joy, celebration, and wedding life. Okay.
Right.
So within the klezmer music, there's a few different genres, right? Some of it is more reminiscent to a cantor praying at synagogue. Okay, and that's where the most sort of sorrowful and soulful things are coming from. What you're talking about right now.
Yes. Yes.
And then when you play klezmer at any simcha, any celebration, any that type of event, then it goes to the another extreme. And what I love about klezmer is in a lot of ways that you can start a piece with this sort of like very soulful lament and just go into this totally different character with abundance of joy.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I know in 1964, there was a play called Fiddler on the Roof that opened up. And it was like an embodiment of, you would say, probably Jewish traditions, because that's the first song basically that you almost hear. And many people don't know this little quick story I'm going to tell you. There was a guy named Sam Mostel, and he was being managed by a guy named Bonnie Josephson, who opened up Cafe Society, which was the first interracial nightclub in New York City. Blacks and whites could dance together. And he and Ivan Black were just joking around with Sam Mostel. And they were saying, listen, we want to manage you, but nobody really knows you. Anyway, so it's like you're starting from zero. And they said, that's it. We'll call you Zero Mostel. And that's how the name caught on, and he became an icon. And it's all in this book about Cafe Society. And it tells that
pretty cool.
It tells that whole story. So you would say that Fiddler on the Roof, it included many klezmer type melodies and scales and modes, which basically highlighted that in the play. Would you say?
Certainly, yeah. Huge influence of klezmer on it. Yes, absolutely. So it basically sort of married some of the classical harmonies and some of the klezmer melodies, and just certainly composed very much in style of.
Beautiful. And then I understand on January 5th, 2020 was the last performance. There was an actual company of Fiddler on the Roof that reopened, performing the whole play in Yiddish.
In Yiddish, that's right. It's a Jewish theater, Volksbühne.
Yes.
The last remaining Yiddish theater in New York.
Now, can we distinguish that? Hebrew and Yiddish are two completely different languages. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. Hebrew is a language of the Bible. Hebrew is the ancient language of Jewish people. Yiddish is a jargon language. What I mean by that is that when Jewish people lived in Germany,
yes,
and in certain regions of France, which we used to sort of go back and forth between Germany and France a lot, Alsace-Lorraine, they developed this language, which was written in Hebrew letters, but had lots of medieval German and lots of Hebrew mixed in. So it's a basically mixture of Hebrew and German together, medieval German. And that's what Yiddish is. Then many Jewish people in later years, they moved to Eastern Europe because there was a lot of persecution in Western Europe. So some of them moved back. There was a lot of movement back and forth, but the Jews from East who moved to Eastern Europe, to Poland, to Russia, to Ukraine, to many other countries, Lithuania and such, there was a lot of new words, some of the Slavic words that were added to it. Okay. But mostly it's a medieval German and Hebrew.
Yes. And, you know, fortunately, I've had the pleasure of working with and hiring Andy Statman, Metropolitan, Klezmer, and I didn't realize how popular that he was with Klezmer lovers. You know, as a musician, he's put a lot of time and a lot of work.
He's amazing. Andy Statman is amazing. Absolutely.
Yes. Now, what are the different instruments? Because I understand in a new modern sense, the modern klezmer bands have added electric instruments and instruments that weren't traditionally part of it when it first began, the music. Is that true?
You know, the beautiful thing about any folkloric tradition or any folk music or any, how should I say, not a classically written music, it's a music that can be played with any instrument. Okay, so if you look at the klezmer orchestras in Renaissance, you would see like lots of you know, 2, maybe 5, 6 string instrument playing.
Yes. Yes.
You would see the wooden flutes. You would see all kinds of viols and all that kind of stuff, right? Later on, only much later on, you see clarinet. Okay.
Okay.
So some of the pictures from the beginning of the century, I'm talking about the 20th century, of course.
Right.
You see pretty big bands, like, you know, you would see 2 trumpets, like 4 violins. You would see and it's again comes to whatever they had in the village.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
They even had a joke, you know, why klezmer band doesn't have a piano? Because it's harder to run away from Kazakhs with the piano. But you know,
wow.
But basically, you know, to tell you the truth, whatever instrument they had, they used. Okay.
Right.
So obviously, there had to be some kind of harmony instrument. There had to be some kind of melody instrument, right? And so the string instrument is actually probably more ancient instrument than a clarinet in a klezmer band.
Yes.
Okay?
Now another thing that I think is known is that Woody Allen, the producer, actor, and director, he is an excellent clarinetist and an excellent klezmer musician, and he composes and usually plays music and has played music for many of his films. Have you ever heard him play before, Woody Allen, on clarinet?
You know, I've actually never heard him play myself,
yes.
But just yesterday I worked with the drummer who has played in his band, in Woody Allen's band.
Yes.
And he was telling me stories. And he was telling, you know how musicians tell stories. He was telling me stories, and it was kind of interesting. And Woody Allen is also a huge fan of jazz. I'm sure you know.
Oh, of course, definitely.
And so it would be mostly jazz that they would play, with occasional klezmer thing, of course.
Yeah, well, he plays a lot of jazz, but I know if he wanted to, he could play strictly klezmer music if that's what he wanted to do. Would you say that a lot of klezmer music relies on and uses the melodic minor scale a lot of the melodies are in a melodic minor or harmonic minor mode. What would you say?
Lots of compositions in Klezmer are based on like several modes, you know, and a lot of these modes they come from the synagogue.
Ah,
A lot of these modes come from the prayers, counter prayers throughout the centuries. Okay,
right.
so there's something called Ahava Rabbah.
David, I was going to ask you that question because many of the guests that we have on that specialize in certain kinds of music, it all goes back a little bit to the religious aspect and origins. My question to you, or maybe this is probably the best way for our audience to understand Klezmer music. If I was to take young people who are listening to this program and say, I want to introduce them to this, what would you recommend? How would we do that now?
Well, you know, sometimes hearing for the first time can be louder than any words, or better than any words that we can say. Kind of hard to describe something without listening to it.
Is there a particular group of artists that you think would be ideal for that kind of introduction?
You know, there's a lot of good artists on the scene right now, and Clyde mentioned some of them. Clyde mentioned certainly Andy Statman.
Metropolitan Klezmer.
Metropolitan Klezmer. They're good friends of mine. I've played in their band and with them individually at different gigs, concerts, you know, you name it. They're wonderful people. There are many more older and younger groups, really too many to mention. Nowadays, you know, thankfully to the powers of internet and YouTube and Zoom now, we can pretty much learn anything about anything. That's a wonderful thing.
Sure. Now, would you say that Klezmer music now, today, is struggling to survive and hold its audiences? Or would you say, because of the internet, as you just mentioned, it has spawned and developed new audiences? What do you say?
You know what? Nobody really knows for 100% what's going to happen.
Yes.
Now with the COVID situation, nobody knows anything what's going to happen at all. And I remember, you probably remember also, that, you know, about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, every single time, you know, you would, from time to time, you read a newspaper article and about the classical music or the Klezmer music or the jazz or anything else. Jazz is dead. Classical music is dead. You know, Klezmer is dead.
Yes.
You know, in 20 years, it's going to be nothing. In 30 years, it's going to be nothing. I think Klezmer will always be, you know, somewhere.
Right.
Played by somebody.
Right.
It will be somewhere played by somebody, played somehow in some context.
Right.
Just like the classical music will always be there, just like jazz will always be there. The true music, the true art will always be there and will survive. Doesn't matter what and how. And how is it going to be exactly? Not me, not you. Nobody really knows.
Nobody knows. Now, what would you say on another note? There is a Hasidic rap artist named Matish Yahu. Have you heard of him?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Do you like his music and his platform? Because he seems to have garnished a lot of young Jewish people really love him and they follow him. I remember the first night I saw him debut on Jay Leno.
What did you think?
I didn't know who he was. But after I saw that, I said, whoa, this guy has got it together. I don't know where he's getting it, the flow, the rhyme. He got it.
my vehicle, 8 nights. Gonna shine invincible, no longer be divisible. Born to the struggle, keep on moving through all this hustle. Head up, head down through all of the bustle. New York City, wanna flex your muscle. Look so down, look so puzzled. Hunt around your fire through all the rubble. Bound to stumble and fall, but my strength comes not from man at all. Bound to stumble and fall, but my strength comes not from man at all. Do you believe in miracles? Am I hearing you, or am I seeing you? Headlights and no lights, these lights fit me right and bless me to the highest heights with your miracle.
And after that
yeah.
day, he just shot to the top, so much so that even in Jamaica, they would have him opening up for Jamaican artists. People embraced him as very real, as I did. And then Jay Leno had him come out for an interview, and I said, "Man, you're incredible. Where did you get this?" He said, "Hey, I listened to Bob Marley. I listened to all the top hip hop artists, and I just put it together in my own way to speak of my message to my people."
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, we all live our own individual lives. We all explore different aspects of ourselves and the world around us.
Yes.
And some people have a great gift by being able to present it in a a beautiful and concise and way that speaks to a lot of other people, and this is a great thing that he has going on.
Yes. Any questions, Andrew, from you?
Yeah,
I've been
not so
talking too
much
much.
questions. I'm you know, Clyde, I really would like to spend some time with David to talk about Fiddler on the Roof a little bit more, and we're going to
Oh,
have
yeah.
to bring him back to do that. I know
Okay.
he's on a run. He's got to run around.
Just in about a minute, actually, to tell you.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
so we're going to bring you back. I hope. I don't know if
That'll be
Clyde had
great.
mentioned to you, but we produced the 50th anniversary Fiddler on the Roof. They gave us the rights to do that, and I played Tevye in that. And I would really
That's
love.
where I recognize you from.
So I would love to be able to have a little more of a conversation about that
I'm like, where did I see that guy?
in front of everybody. I think people would really be interested in hearing your take if we dive in a little bit more about the folklore and the history of that whole situation. So first, let me thank you for spending
Thank you.
time. I know it was so difficult to squeeze us in today, but we so much appreciate it. And we
Thank you
are
very
going to
much.
hope that you'll come back, and we'll do part 2 of this wonderful story. So, David, thanks on behalf of all of us. We hope to see you soon. We know you got to run, so we won't hold you much longer.
Okay.
Thanks again so much,
you,
and we'll
Dave.
be
Thank
talking
you.
soon.
And I'll give you a call soon, okay, Dave? We'll
Great.
catch up tomorrow, okay?
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, my brother.
Yeah.
Stay well.
Have a
Okay.
great day. Bye-bye.
All right.
Clyde, we absolutely have to bring David back because we just have so much more to talk to him about. And I certainly want to Debbie into the Fiddler on the Roof
Yes.
routine.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you and I were a big part of the 50th anniversary performance of Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes, we were.
And we certainly would like to hear David's take on that whole folklore and that time and the history and the music and everything else. I think that would be spectacular.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
So-
we have a lot more that we can squeeze out of him, and a lot more we can learn from him. So we will bring him back.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Folks, stay advised of all the events by following the Josephine Foundation on our Facebook page and Instagram account. A big, big thanks to our special guest tonight, David Glukh. And on behalf of my co-host, Mr. Clyde Ballard, our producer, Mr. Gio Vitozzi, and myself, peace, strength, and love until we see you next week on Odds and Ends Life Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts. Good night, everybody.
And stay bright.
Amen.
A fiddler on the roof. Sounds crazy, though. But in our little village of Anatevka, you might say, we're all like a fiddler on the roof, trying to scratch out a simple but pleasant tune without breaking our necks. It isn't easy. Now you might ask, why do we stay here if it's so dangerous? We stay because Anatevka is our home. And how do we keep our balance? This I tell you with a single word. Tradition! We have kept our balance for many years. Here in Anatevka, we have a tradition for everything. How to eat, how to sleep, how to wear our clothes. For instance, we always keep our heads covered and wear a prayer shawl. This to show our constant devotion to God. Now you might ask, how did this tradition get started? Well, I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, we always know who we are and what our God wants us to be.
Day and night must scramble for a living, feed a wife and children, say his daily prayers, and who has the right, as master of the house, to have the final word at home? The Papa, the Papa, tradition, the Papa, tradition.
Who must know the way to make a proper home, a quiet home, a kosher home? Who must raise a family and run the home, so Papa's free to read the holy book? The mama, tradition. The mama, tradition.
At 3 I started Hebrew school, at 10 I learned a trade. I hear they picked up right for me, I hope